I'll never forget the way they looked at my son. He stood there on stage, gripping the mic like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His voice shook. His words came out broken, scattered, caught in his throat. And then, I heard it. A whisper from one of the teachers in the front row. "He's ruining it." They thought I wouldn't hear, but I did. And in that instant, I couldn't breathe. My heart dropped. My son Cayenne was stuttering through a line he was never even supposed to speak. He wasn't on the script. He wasn't in the scene. But there he was on that stage in front of hundreds, trying and failing and still trying. I sat frozen in my seat, my hands trembling in my lap. Parents started shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. Some whispered, one even chuckled. My face was burning. I wanted to stand up and scream. I wanted to protect him, to pull him off that stage and away from all of it. And then, right when I felt like I was about to break, the loudspeaker clicked on. A voice filled the auditorium. Actually, he wasn't supposed to speak. I gave him the mic. The room went dead silent, and what happened next, no one saw coming. It had been a rough couple of years for Kian and me. After his father left, it was just the two of us figuring life out one morning at a time. I worked freelance graphic design jobs from our little 2-bedroom apartment in Charleston, South Carolina, juggling deadlines with speech therapy appointments and PTA meetings. Money was tight, but Ken never asked for much. He found joy in small things, a new box of crayons, pancakes on a Sunday, or curling up with a book about pirates and adventures far from home. Kian was 9 with dark curly hair and eyes that always seemed to be watching the world a little deeper than other kids. He had a soft voice, thoughtful and quiet, and he carried his words carefully. His stutter had started when he was 5, shortly after the divorce. At first, I thought it might pass, but months turned to years, and the stutter stayed. Some days were better than others, but the worry never left me. I'd catch him practicing in front of the mirror, whispering words to himself, stopping and starting over until he got through a sentence. At school, he kept to himself. His teachers described him as sweet, well-behaved, respectful, but no one called him confident. No one called him brave, except me. I saw the courage in him every day. I saw it in the way he walked into classrooms where kids didn't always understand him. I saw it in the way he never let himself shut down, even after a bad day. I knew he was special, and I knew if the world gave him the space to show it, others would see it too. When he came home one afternoon in March, holding a crumpled flyer with Spring Theater Showcase printed in bold letters, I saw that flicker of hope in his eyes. "Mom, guess what? They're doing auditions, and I want to try." My first instinct was hesitation. I knew how much he loved plays, how he'd reenact scenes from cartoons in the living room, mimicking voices and gestures with surprising accuracy, but speaking in front of people on stage. I knelt beside him and asked gently, "Are you sure? You don't have to prove anything to anyone." "I know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to. I just want to try." So he did. He auditioned for the play, and to our surprise, he got a small part. Non-speaking, just background movement and stage presence. It was a big win for him. He came home beaming that day, twirling around our kitchen with his arms out like he was already under the spotlight. For the next month, he threw himself into it. He rehearsed after school and stayed up late studying the script. Even though he didn't have lines, he memorized everyone else's parts too. He wanted to understand the whole story, not just where he stood. The night before the play, he looked nervous. "Mom," he said, tugging at the edge of his shirt, "what if I mess up? Just standing there?" "You won't," I told him. "But even if something goes wrong, the people who matter will still see how hard you worked, and I'm already proud of you." He smiled, but his hands didn't stop fidgeting. On the night of the performance, the school auditorium was packed. Rows and rows of folding chairs filled with parents and grandparents. I found my seat in the middle, clutching my phone, ready to record his moment. The stage was decorated like a castle. Paper clouds hung from the ceiling. Teachers buzzed around, fixing props and guiding students into their places. I spotted Khan behind the curtain, peeking out, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. I gave him a thumbs up and mouthed, "You've got this." He nodded barely. The lights dimmed. The music began. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. Until Kian stepped forward with a microphone. A microphone he was never meant to have. And in that split second, my heart started racing because I could see it in his posture. This wasn't a mistake. This was something he planned, but no one had told me. Not the teacher, not the director, not even him. I sat forward in my chair, frozen, watching my son walk into the spotlight completely unannounced. The other students looked confused. The audience shifted in their seats, and Kian, my sweet, quiet boy, lifted the mic to his mouth and began to speak. That was the moment everything changed. He shouldn't have had the mic. That was the first thought that hit me. Not fear, not pride, just pure confusion. Kian wasn't listed to speak. I'd read the program 3 times while waiting for the show to begin. He had no lines. So when I saw him take a step forward away from the group and raise a microphone to his lips, my breath caught in my throat. For a second, I thought maybe it was a mistake, a technical slip. Maybe he picked it up by accident. Maybe a teacher would step in, gently guide him back, laugh it off. But no one moved. Not the other kids, not the teachers, not the stage director. Crouched behind the curtain, wide-eyed and frozen. The first sound that came from Kian's mouth was barely audible. It was the beginning of a sentence, soft and shaky. Then it stopped. He tried again. And there it was, the stutter. That familiar, painful stumble as he wrestled with the first word. His lips moved, his brow furrowed, and he kept going, one syllable at a time, forcing out the line he must have memorized 100 times in his room. The audience was silent. No one clapped, no one laughed, just silence. A hot wave of panic surged through me. My hands gripped the sides of my chair. I could see his chest rising and falling too fast, the way it did when he got anxious. I wanted to run to him, to shield him, to pull him off that stage and whisper, "It's okay. You don't have to prove anything to them." But I didn't move. Because deep down, I knew he wanted this. He had chosen this. And then, as he fought through another stammer, I heard it. A voice, a whisper, not from the crowd, but close. The front row, sharp, careless, aimed like a blade. "He's ruining it." I turned my head and saw Mr. Cullen, the drama teacher. He was leaning toward another teacher, lips curled in irritation. She didn't respond, just looked away uncomfortably. But I saw her eyes, embarrassed, pitying. My stomach twisted. Ruining. Kian wasn't ruining anything. He was trying harder than any kid on that stage. He was doing something most adults wouldn't dare. And they were mocking him. I looked back up. Khan had paused. His eyes flicked to the crowd like he could feel the shift, the tension, the judgment, the discomfort. For a moment, I thought he was going to stop, but he didn't. He kept going, stuttering his way through the line, clutching the mic like it was anchoring him in place. His voice cracked, but he finished the sentence barely. There was no applause, no reaction, just more silence. The kids beside him shifted, glancing at each other. Some looked confused. One boy in the back snickered. My throat tightened. This was the nightmare I had always feared. That the world would see his difference before they saw his heart. That they would measure his worth by his words, not his courage. And there he was, standing alone, exposed, stumbling in front of 100. People who didn't understand him? Tears filled my eyes. I blinked hard, trying not to let them fall. Not yet. The worst part wasn't the whisper. It was the stillness, the waiting. Everyone was waiting for someone to fix it, for a teacher to interrupt, for a tech to cut the mic, for him to step back, but nothing happened. And then something did. A loud click came over the auditorium speaker system. The mic on stage suddenly cut off. Ken's voice disappeared. He blinked, startled, looking around. I sat forward in my seat, heart in my throat. A new voice filled the room, calm, clear, unmistakable. Actually, he wasn't supposed to speak. The voice belonged to Principal Morales. You could hear the tension shift. The collective inhale of an audience caught off guard. Heads turned toward the back of the auditorium, toward the control booth, where the principal stood holding her own mic. My pulse pounded in my ears. What was she doing? What did she mean? She continued. I gave him the mic. Just 6 words, but they hit like a drum beat. The stage lights suddenly felt hotter. The silence grew heavier. Khan was still standing there, frozen. I could see the panic flicker behind his eyes, as if he was unsure whether he had done something wrong or something brave. And I realized in that moment, everything was about to change. The moment Principal Morales' voice echoed through the auditorium, everything changed. The murmurs stopped. The judgment faded into confusion. Every eye turned toward the back of the room, trying to make sense of what was happening. She repeated herself calmly, but with a quiet authority that cut through the thick tension in the air. I gave him the mic. My heart jumped. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some misstep or stage mishap. This had been planned, not by Mr. Cullen, not by the drama team, but by someone who actually saw my son. Then, just as quickly as the announcement came, the principal stepped away from the sound booth and made her way down the side aisle. She walked slowly, steadily, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. The audience stayed silent, watching, waiting. When she reached the front of the stage, she turned to face the crowd, not the kids, not the actors, United States, the parents, the adults, and she spoke. I know some of you are confused right now. I know that wasn't in the program, but what you just saw wasn't a mistake. She paused for a moment, and I could feel my breath catching again. Ken came to me 3 weeks ago. He asked if he could say one line, just one, not for attention, not to steal the spotlight. He said he wanted to feel what it was like to be heard. I felt tears sliding down my face before I even noticed them. She looked up at the stage where Kyan stood frozen, wide-eyed, clutching the mic that no longer worked. He practiced with me every morning before school. He never missed a day. Rain or shine, he showed up in my office at 7:15 with his little script folded in his hand. He said this play meant something to him, that this character meant something to him, and that even though he was scared, he wanted to try. Crowd was quiet, stunned into stillness. Mr. Cullen's face was red. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but said nothing. Principal Morales looked back at us. I told him he could do it. I told him I'd be there if he needed help. Because sometimes bravery doesn't look like being loud or perfect. Sometimes it looks like a quiet kid with a stutter standing in front of a room full of strangers asking for the mic. I couldn't take my eyes off my son. His lips were parted slightly. His eyes were glassy. I don't think he even knew how to react, but something in his shoulders had changed. He wasn't curled inward anymore. He wasn't shrinking. He was standing taller now, just slightly. Then Principal Morales turned toward him. Keon, you did exactly what you said you would, and I'm proud of you. It was quiet, completely, perfectly quiet. And then from the back row, someone stood. A woman, another mom, I think, clapped once, then again, then more people joined. A slow build, like a wave gaining strength. Row by row, people rose to their feet. The sound grew louder, stronger. I stood too, hands to my mouth, sobbing now and not caring who saw it. I looked at Khan. His eyes scanned the crowd, trying to process it all. He looked to the wings where a stagehand gave him a nod. Then he stepped back into place. The play continued, and Khan didn't have any more lines. He wasn't meant to, but he didn't need them. He had already said more in those few stumbling words than most people say with entire speeches. Afterward, backstage, he ran into my arms before I could even speak. "I messed up," he whispered. "No," I said, holding him tighter than ever. "You showed up. You were brave. That's everything. I was so scared." "I know," I told him, kissing the top of his head. "But you still stood there, and that's something most people never do." Later, as we walked to the car, he asked, "Was she mad? Principal Morales?" I smiled. "No, baby. She was proud. She saw you. She believed in you." He looked out the window during the ride home, silent for a while. Then, softly, he said, "I want to do it again next year, but maybe a bigger part." I laughed through the last of my tears. "You'll get one. You earned it." The school play ended, without fanfare. There was no big musical number, no curtain drop. The kids bowed, the lights dimmed, and the audience slowly made their way out, still buzzing from what they had witnessed. But something had shifted. You could feel it. There was a different energy in the room, less of a performance, more of a reckoning. I stayed in my seat longer than most, trying to collect myself. Around me, parents chatted awkwardly, unsure of how to talk about what had just happened. A few looked over at me, but no one said anything. Some probably still didn't understand what Khan had done. Others just didn't want to be the first to say they were wrong. I didn't care. I wasn't there for them. When I made my way backstage, the hallway was buzzing with kids reuniting with their parents. There were costumes half unzipped, glitter on the floor, and lines from the play still echoing as excited voices relived their favorite moments. Then I heard my name. Mrs. Rain. It was Principal Morales. She moved toward me quickly, clipboard, still in hand, the kind of person who never stops working, even during chaos. I opened my mouth to thank her, but she beat me to it. "Before anything else," she said, looking me squarely in the eye, "you need to know your son is extraordinary." I tried to answer, but my voice caught in my throat. She continued, "I wasn't sure if he'd go through with it. He was terrified, but he showed up every morning earlier than any student. Some days he barely got through the line. Other days he nailed it. He never gave up." "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally asked, my voice soft. She smiled. "He asked me not to. He said he wanted it to be a surprise." I shook my head, a tear sliding down my cheek again. He said, "I want my mom to see me be brave." Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. That night, Keon didn't just step forward. He took control of his own story. When I found him, he was sitting in the corner of the dressing room, still in costume, slowly peeling off his paper crown. His eyes were red, but he wasn't crying, just sitting, thinking. I knelt beside him. "Hey," I said, touching his arm. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. He didn't respond right away. Then he said, my voice got stuck. "But you still got the words out." He nodded, but his expression stayed serious. "Do you think they were mad?" I took a breath. I think some people were surprised. I think some people didn't know what to do. But when they stood up for you, that wasn't just clapping. That was them realizing they were wrong. He looked down, at his hands. I heard someone say, "I ruined it." I froze. He had heard. I should have known. Of course he did. I leaned in close, leveling my voice. "You didn't ruin anything. You changed it. You made it real. You made people feel something they weren't expecting to feel. That's what stories are for." He looked up at me uncertain, but I didn't say it right. "No," I said. "You said it honestly. That's what matters." Just then, a small group of kids walked past. One of the boys, Logan I think his name was, stopped. "Hey, Khan." Khan looked up cautiously. "I liked your line," Logan said. "You were like brave or whatever. I'd have freaked out, Khan blinked, unsure what to say. Then he gave a tiny nod. After they left, he whispered, "He never talks to me." "Well," I said, helping him pack up his costume, "he does now." The ride home was quiet again, but lighter this time. Keen held his program in his lap like a trophy. I noticed he had written something in the margins. I did it. He didn't need a standing ovation or a perfect delivery. He needed one moment where he chose himself, and he had it. As we pulled into our driveway, he finally spoke again. "I think I want to write my own play next time." "You absolutely should," I said, turning off the engine. "And you can say whatever you want in it." He smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I saw no fear behind his eyes, just focused fire. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a turning point in a school play. This was the beginning of Kian finding his voice. It's been months since that night, since the school play, since the standing ovation, since Principal Morales handed my son a microphone and changed the way I look at courage. But I still think about it all the time. I think about the way Kian stood there small and trembling and still found a way to speak. I think about the silence in that room, how uncomfortable it was, how honest it was, how necessary. And I think about the whisper, those careless words from a teacher who didn't see what he was witnessing. "He's ruining it." Number, he was rewriting it. Ken didn't just show the audience who he was. He showed me something I didn't realize I needed to see. For years, I'd been trying to protect him from everything, from rejection, from embarrassment, from pain. I filled in his sentences when they took too long. I spoke up for him at conferences. I held my breath when he answered questions in class. I thought I was shielding him, but in truth, I was sometimes standing in the way of his growth. Not out of doubt, but out of fear. I was so afraid the world wouldn't be kind to him that I forgot he had his own kind of strength. After the play, something changed in Khan. It wasn't loud or dramatic. He didn't suddenly stop stuttering or walk around like a different person, but there was something in the way he carried himself. Shoulders a little higher, eyes meeting people's faces more often, sentences spoken with just a touch more boldness. He didn't talk about the play much. He didn't need to, but he did start writing. Every night after homework, he'd sit at the kitchen table with a stack of notebook paper and begin scribbling dialogue and story ideas. He wrote a fantasy play with a dragon who had a stutter, but still led his kingdom into battle. He named him Rail, which he said meant Fireheart. I never told him it wasn't a real word. To me, it was perfect. He showed it to Principal Morales, and she emailed me a week later saying she was going to help him turn it into next year's school production. I cried again that day. Good tears. And then, something else happened. One afternoon, I got a call from Mr. Cullen. At first, I almost let it go to voicemail, but I answered. He cleared his throat before speaking. "I just wanted to say I was wrong." That's all he said at first. No excuses, no justification, just those 4 words. He went on to tell me he'd been meeting with the school counselor, that he was working on listening more and assuming less, that he'd apologized to Kian in person. "I don't think I really saw him," he said, "but I do now." I appreciated that. It didn't erase the hurt, but it mattered. The truth is, not everyone who mocks or dismisses our kids will come back with an apology. Not everyone learns, but sometimes they do. And when they do, it's worth something. Kian still stutters. He still gets nervous when he talks to new people. But he also raises his hand in class now. He volunteers to read short passages. He's even joined the drama club full-time. Last week, he told me he wants to be a screenwriter when he grows up. Because stories make people listen, he said. I looked at him and saw not the little boy who used to whisper his ideas to stuffed animals in his room, but a young man who had been through fire and come out stronger, steadier. "I think you already are," I told him. That one night on stage didn't fix everything, but it didn't have to. It gave him one thing, gave him his moment. the moment he realized that his voice, no matter how it sounded, deserved to be heard. So, if you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated, talked over, or made to feel like your voice isn't strong enough, let me tell you what I now know in my bones. Your moment is coming. And when it does, speak. Even if it shakes, even if it stutters, speak anyway, because someone out there needs to hear you're kind of brave. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own battles or of someone you love, please take a second to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their voice matters, no matter how it sounds. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your stories, or even just a word of encouragement for kids like Khan who are finding the courage to speak. And if you want more real, honest stories like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more ahead, and I'd love for you to be part of it.